That Christmas night seemed, at first, just like all the previous ones. The table was covered with a red tablecloth her mother only took out once a year, the scent of cinnamon and roasted turkey floating through the house, and the rhythmic blinking of the tree lights in the corner of the living room. Isabel, the name she had always gone by, arrived with her fiancé Lucas, a calm and observant man who preferred to quietly watch rather than pass judgment. They had been together for nearly 2 years, and this was their first holiday celebration with her family. Oti. 29. Isabel worked as a freelance translator from her apartment in Seattle and had never truly felt like her life belonged to her. She carried a constant, muffled unease, as if she'd been dropped into a story she hadn't written, forced to memorize a script that wasn't hers. Her relationship with her parents was polite but distant, built on unspoken rules no one dared to break. Emotional closeness was scarce, limited to birthday rituals, text messages, and occasional holiday gatherings. Since childhood, Isabel had avoided asking too many questions. Something inside her had always warned that digging too deep was dangerous. And when she did try when she asked why she had no memories from her early childhood, the answer was always the same. It was because of the war, darling. Your mind blocked out the worst to protect you. Over time, she learned not to insist. But that night, something changed. Lucas, who was flipping through the old photo albums her mother always placed on the table each year, froze as he stared at a page. His expression hardened. Then, without taking his eyes off the images, he gently squeezed her hand and whispered, "Don't you see this?" She frowned, confused, and looked more closely at the photos. They were pictures of herself, supposedly between the ages of 4 and 7, at the beach, in a park, in a kitchen she no longer recognized. In each photo, she wore the same outfit, had the same facial expression, and was captured from the same angle. The background changed, but her image remained oddly identical, as if she had been cut and pasted repeatedly into different scenes. Lucas said nothing else during dinner, but he never let go of her hand. One look at his face was enough to know he was deeply alarmed. Isabel tried to carry on through the evening, answering her parents' questions, smiling when expected. But inside, a sharp anxiety began to pierce deeper with every passing minute. Later that night, back in their apartment, Lucas sat down with her on the couch, opened his laptop, and showed her what he had noticed in more detail. He used an image analysis tool he had installed. Lucas worked as a freelance graphic designer and had a trained eye for spotting digital manipulation. He compared the shadows, the light reflections, the hair edges, and the positioning of her hands. "This isn't normal," he said in a low voice. "It's like someone tried to create a fake story about your childhood, but didn't do it well." Isabel felt goosebumps crawl up her arms. Part of her wanted to deny it, to blame it on bad photo development or sheer coincidence. But another part, older, deeper, was waking up, and with it, a rising fear. They spent hours in silence, going through each album Isabel had brought with her when she moved to Seattle years ago. The more they examined, the more obvious it became. The photos from her early childhood were mostly clumsy fabrications. Some had grotesque details: a duplicated ear, a shadow floating without logic, or an arm that faded into nothing at the edge of a picture. In a few images, the most disturbing thing of all, the baby in the photo wasn't her. The eyes were different. The hair was lighter. The shape of the jaw was wrong, yet her parents had carefully glued those photos into the album, writing dates and captions in cursive handwriting. First walk, Christmas '96, first day at home. Isabel's head began to spin. Suddenly, everything she had believed to be true was in question. What if there had never been a first walk? What if that house had never really been hers? She tried to recall something, anything from before the age of 5. A smell, a game, a song, a face. But all she found was murky silence, like the bottom of a dark lake. Just when she thought there was nothing, a fleeting image flashed in her mind. A woman with dark hair, tied in a scarf, a soft voice singing in a language she didn't understand, and the citrusy perfume of something she couldn't name. Isabel blinked several times, her breathing shortened. Who was that woman, and why did she feel without a shadow of doubt that she knew her? She didn't sleep that night. Wrapped in a blanket, Isabel sat on the couch for hours, feeling the world she knew crack open from the inside. Lucas made her tea, but she barely touched it. Her hands were ice cold, as if her entire body had gone into survival mode. Se started, jotting down thoughts in a notebook, dates, odd details she had once dismissed. She remembered how, as a child, she often woke up crying, calling for mommy, and how her adoptive mother would hush her with forced tenderness and a dissolvable pill hidden in apple juice. She recalled being asked at school where she was born and stammering, because no one had ever explained it properly. "You were very little. We rescued you during the war," they'd say, as if that were enough. At dawn, she didn't hesitate. She picked up her phone, searched the number of the local police station, and dialed. Her voice trembled as she explained what they had discovered. At first, the officer on the other end didn't quite understand. An adult woman claiming she might have been kidnapped by her own parents? But when Isabel mentioned the altered photos, the memory gaps, and a possible connection to the Balkan War, the officer's tone changed. They asked her to come in person to file a full report and to bring all available material. Lucas held her hand in silence. No words were needed. They both knew that from this moment forward, there would be no turning back. The visit to the police station felt surreal, like watching herself from outside her own body. As the officer took notes, Isabel laid out a folder on the desk containing copies of the edited photos. Her birth certificate a blurry photocopy, she had never questioned, and a preschool letter typed without a signature. Everything looked fragile, almost theatrical. The officer, an older man with thick eyebrows and a calm voice, looked at her with a blend of skepticism and caution. "We'll investigate," he said, "but this could take time. Many war records are sealed, and if this happens in another country, we'll need international cooperation." Isabel nodded quietly. She wasn't seeking justice yet, she simply needed the truth. She needed to know if her entire life had been part of someone else's script. Back at home, Lucas powered up his computer and began digging. They searched Balkan surnames, combed through forums in Serbian, Croatian, and Bosnian. Isabel remembered a strange incident. A few years back, her adoptive mother had received a social media message written in a language Isabel couldn't understand. The only parts she recognized were two red heart emojis and a name, Mara. Her mother had dismissed it coldly, calling it spam and deleting it in front of her. But her hands were shaking. Now, that name echoed like a distant bell. Isabel typed it into a search bar, Mara Petrovic. Dozens of results appeared. One profile showed a woman with light eyes, a sad smile, and a bakery in the background. Isabelle Frosse, it was her face only, in another life. A shiver ran down Isabel's spine. She stared at the profile picture, unable to look away. There was something in the woman's eyes, a blend of grief and hope that shook her to the core. Even knowing it might be a mistake, she typed a short message in English. "Hi, my name is Isabel, but I'm not sure that's really my name. Did you ever lose a daughter during the war?" She hesitated before sending it, but Lucas gave her a small nod of encouragement. Then, they waited. Minutes stretched into hours. The silence in her inbox felt unbearable. Isabel couldn't sit still. She paced the apartment, scratched her nails, drank water without thirst. And then, just before sunset, the reply arrived. "My name is Mara. My daughter's name was Milena." She disappeared. In 1996, she was 3 years old. "I never saw her again. I have searched every day since." The message ended with a line that shattered any remaining doubt. "You had a small scar behind your left ear, from when you fell while playing with the neighbor's dogs. Only you and I knew that." Isabel instinctively touched the spot. The scar was there. She had always assumed it was insignificant. Now it was an anchor. They scheduled a video call for that same night. When the call connected, the first few seconds were nothing but tears. No introductions, no explanations. Just two souls, separated by war, lies, and time, recognizing each other in silence. Posso continuar. During that video call, Isabel or Melanie, as she was beginning to accept in silence, heard the real story of her disappearance for the first time. Mara explained that in the chaos of war, when bombs were falling less than 10 kilometers from their neighborhood, she had left her daughter in the care of a trusted neighbor for a few hours while handling paperwork at a government office. But when she returned, the house was empty, the Nahar gone, Milena gone. She filed reports everywhere, traveled between cities, searched refugee camps, stood in endless lines at embassies and relief offices. No one had answers. Then, in 1999, someone told her that a foreign couple with a small child had crossed the border under humanitarian evacuation status. That single lead was all she had for more than 2 decades. Isabel couldn't stop crying. Every word Mara spoke brought back fragments of an erased identity. The language she thought she didn't know began surfacing in scattered words inside her head. She remembered wordless songs, caresses with a different rhythm, a gray stuffed animal with blue spots. She asked if Mara still had it. Mara stepped away from the screen. When she returned, she held the same toy, one ear torn off, its eyes stitched with red thread. Isabel let out a cry that folded her inward. That object was real. She wasn't imagining things. That childhood had happened. It wasn't a fantasy. She wasn't an imposter. After ending the call, she knew what had to be done. Not just for herself, but for the mother who had never stopped searching. The next day, they went together to the police station, this time with tangible evidence. They brought printed copies of the manipulated photos, the message where Mara described the scar, screenshots of their conversation, and most importantly, a digitized copy of an old missing person flyer distributed by the Red Cross in 1997, featuring a photo of a little girl that perfectly matched Isabel's face at age 3. The officer who received them didn't hesitate. He collected the documents, activated the International Protocol for Child Abduction in wartime, and assured them the case would be reopened with priority status. For the first time, Isabel felt the system was on her side, not treating her as an anonymous victim, but as someone finally reclaiming her truth. The investigation progressed faster than expected. Within days, it was confirmed that Isabel's adoption documents had been falsified. Her U.S. passport, used her entire life, had been issued with fabricated data. Her so-called parents had no official records of adopting her legally. They had entered the war refugee program in the 90 Segundos, presenting a young child as an orphan without identification, a flexible legal status often used in emergencies. But in this case, used to cover up an abduction, Isabel felt devastated, not just by the betrayal, but by the confirmation of her greatest fear. She hadn't been rescued. She had been taken, used as a key to unlock a new life. A life that was never hers to begin with. 2 days later, her adoptive parents showed up at her door without warning, carrying a bag of hot soup and wearing tense expressions that barely masked their nerves. Her adoptive mother tried to smile as if nothing were wrong, but her voice trembled as she asked, "Can we talk for a moment?" Isabel didn't answer. She simply stepped aside and let them in, her gaze fixed on the floor. Lucas stood in the kitchen, watching every move. They sat on the couch, and the silence stretched. Finally, her father spoke first. "We knew this day might come. It wasn't easy for us either." Isabel looked at them in shock. Her mother then took over and confessed they weren't her real parents, that a woman had begged them during the war to take her child and save her, that it had been a life-or-death decision. But Isabel didn't believe them. Every word sounded rehearsed. She asked about the manipulated photos, why they never told her the truth, why they had lied for nearly 3 decades, and then the most brutal truth emerged. They had needed a small child to qualify for a fast-track immigration program. Someone had told them about a girl alone, vulnerable, without a family. They saw an opportunity and took it. "We didn't do it to hurt anyone," her adoptive mother said. "We just wanted a better life." But Isabel wasn't listening anymore. Their words faded into a distant murmur. In that moment she understood she had never been loved by the people who raised her. She had been useful. She had been an emotional passport for two desperate adults. The following days became a blur of legal procedures and emotional numbness. Isabel felt like she was floating outside her own body, watching her life collapse and rebuild at the same time. The district attorney's office opened a formal case against the couple who had raised her, charging them with child abduction, document forgery, and immigration fraud. Their American passports were revoked, and after an expedited investigation, it was determined they would be deported to Serbia with no right to appeal. Isabel didn't feel relief, only a heavy silence, like something inside her had finally gone still. She didn't celebrate their downfall, but she felt no pity either. What they had built on lies had finally devoured them from within. Amid all the chaos, one person remained quietly by her side, her adoptive sister, Na. At first, Na kept her distance, maybe out of fear, maybe shame, but a week after the scandal broke, she sent Isabel a simple message. "If you want to talk, I'm here." Isabel hesitated. Could she trust someone who had grown up inside the same house where her childhood had been stolen? Still, she agreed to meet. They sat in a small cafe, and over coffee and tears, they uncovered something fragile but real. Na admitted that, even as a child, she had sensed something was off but never had the courage to ask. She had always noticed how differently Isabel was treated, as if she were borrowed rather than truly theirs. And now, for the first time, they spoke with no more secrets between them. The reunion with NA didn't fix everything, but it opened an unexpected door. Isabel began to realize that her story didn't have to be defined only by loss. It was still possible to rebuild connections, even if they weren't bound by blood. Still, her deepest longing remained: to reclaim the time she had lost with her real mother. Until then, Mara had only existed through video calls and emotional messages, but now she began moving heaven and earth to reunite with her daughter. She applied for entry into the US through a family reunification program, and thanks to the support of NGOs and legal teams specialized in war victims, her request was fast. Isabel waited for her at the airport with a mixture of anxiety and tenderness. And when she saw Mara walk through the arrivals gate with a worn suitcase and tears in her eyes, no words were necessary. They ran to each other, and that long silent embrace sealed what decades of distance had failed to erase. Mara moved into a small apartment just 15 minutes from Isabel's home. She found work at a neighborhood bakery, and every morning before 6, she would bake bread infused with that faint orange aroma Isabel remembered from somewhere deep inside her memory. Slowly, they began to create new routines. They shared dinners, swapped childhood stories and recipes, and cried when they discovered small coincidences time hadn't managed to erase. One evening, as Isabel was designing the invitations for her wedding to Lucas, she handed one to Mara in person. "I want you in the front row," she said. Mara broke into tears. This time, she wasn't a guest, she wasn't a forgotten figure from the past. She was a mother, in the present, with a name, a face, and a place in her daughter's life. And that moment sealed something no war could destroy: the bond that had survived oblivion. The day of the wedding arrived with soft sunlight and a breeze that gently stirred the white curtains of the venue. Isabel, dressed simply yet radiantly, walked toward the altar with a serene expression. There were no nerves, no doubts, only a sense of completeness. In the front row, Mara watched her with teary eyes, glowing with pride. At the end of the aisle, Lucas waited with the same attentive gaze that once uncovered a secret buried in a photo album. The moment was brief, but within it a lifetime was contained. There was no room for hatred or resentment, only for the present, only for truth. After everything she had lived through, Isabel understood she didn't need to fully comprehend her past to live her future. Her life story had been written with torn pages and manipulated lines, but now she held the pen. Her legal name changed. She was no longer Isabel. She officially reclaimed the name Mara had given her at birth, Milena, not as a rejection of her past, but as a way to close the circle. Today, she dedicates her life to helping other victims of child disappearance, especially in war-affected regions. And every time she tells her story, she sees that flicker of hope and recognition in the eyes of others. Not all endings are happy. Pero are happy. But sometimes, the truth is enough to begin again.